In this video, we're diving deep into one of Bobby Fischer's wildest games. Back in Santa Monica, California in 1966, Fischer assembled an unreal attack directly out of the opening. His opponent wasn't just some random Joe either. Bent Larsen was one of the strongest grandmasters of his time. Fischer kicks off with e4, best by test. Larsen replies knight f6, Alekhine's defense. Didn't mean to rhyme there. e5, kicking the knight, and it goes to d5. White proceeds with d4 and black responds d6. In the Alekhine's defense, black aims to provoke white into overextending their pawns, so d6 is designed to induce a white pawn on e5 that will be hard to defend. Fischer plays knight f6, enabling white to recapture with the knight if black takes the pawn, which he does. Now the two most common moves here are c6 and g6. Black opts for the third most common move, knight d7. This choice allows white to make a remarkable sacrifice with knight takes f7. Black's queen is smothered, forcing Larsen to capture the knight. White then plays queen h5 check, forking the king and the knight. Black's best move is moving the king to e6 to defend the knight, because losing the piece back would not only mean his king is exposed, he's down a pawn on top of that. And definitely avoid king to g8 unless you want a quick checkmate. After king e6, white has two options. One of them is to play c4, charging down the center towards the king. The knight could retreat to attack the queen, but white could continue the forward march with check. After king d6, the only move, white could play queen f7, threatening a deadly check on e6. This variation continues some more, but what I'm trying to get at is that despite being down a pawn, white has excellent attacking chances. Instead of this tricky line, Fischer chooses queen g4, a move that has led to several grandmaster draws in the past by way of this repetition of moves. But after repeating once, Larsen apparently forgets who he's up against and plays king d6. Now, fierce Fischer initiates a full-blown attack. c4 lands. Black cannot play knight 5 to f6 because he would get obliterated. After c5 check, black wouldn't be able to move the king at all, because both moves would lead to checkmate. So the pawn would have to be captured and black would be hopelessly lost. You know it's time to give up when your king is your furthest advanced piece. Back to the game. Instead, we saw knight 7 to f6 attacking the queen. White is still hitting the knight, so he moves his queen out of danger with check. Then on the next move, he can regain the piece. Black has a couple ways to recapture the pawn, but to avoid any annoying bishop c4 pins, he takes with the queen. Material is even here, but Fischer seizes the initiative. He does so by making a threat on every single one of his following moves. Take a moment to see if you can figure out white's best plan. Well, white wants to play bishop c4, but the queen is stopping that. So Fischer starts knight c3 attacking the queen, but giving away d4. Next comes bishop e3 hitting the queen again. She's running out of squares and ends up on b4 where, you guessed it, a3, another attack. And this time the queen is finally forced away from the defense of c4. With the queen absolutely battered, Fischer turns his attention to the enemy king. Bishop c4 check. Black's king is forced to e7, followed by yet another attack, rook d1 check. The king heads miserably to e8. In just 5 moves, white developed just about all of his pieces to incredibly active squares. And what's more, each move came with tempo. Now we've reached the critical moment, or rather, the final critical moment, since this entire game has been intense. White has one move that's by far the strongest here, and Fischer finds it. It's knight b5. This move threatens checkmate with knight takes c7, and it's extremely difficult for black to meet that threat. Black could try bishop d7, cutting off the rook's control of the d-file. Then after knight takes c7 and king e8, white would have knight e6, exploiting the pin. To avoid checkmate, black's king is forced back to e8. White could even castle here if he wanted, but I liked this variation, where white can eventually play queen d8 check, which would win a lot of material. And if the queen is captured, then there's this neat smothered mate. Black has other ways to stop checkmate, like e6, or even sacrificing his queen for the knight. But all of them ultimately lead to losing positions. So for that reason, Larsen resigns on this 19th move, knight b5. I hope you enjoyed this game. Don't forget to like the video, share it with your fellow chess enthusiasts, and subscribe for more chess content.